afternoon, Slave family. I am so thrilled and completely honored to have our very special guest today. We are joined by one of the most influential and powerful women in law, and that is Paulette Brown. So, first and foremost, thank you so much for being here, Paulette.
Thanks, Leanne, so much for having me.
Oh, it's definitely an honor. And for those of you who don't know, I will tell you her accomplishments are so long, we could take up this entire interview running through them. So I picked a few highlights just to touch on some of the unbelievable accolades she has. As a starter, Paulette Brown was the first woman of color to serve as the president of the American Bar Association. And she also served as the president of the National Bar Association. She has been internationally recognized for her work on advancing diversity and inclusion. In addition to that, she was the first female chairperson for the labor and employment section of the New Jersey Bar. In addition to that, she's also been recognized by the National Law Journal, as one of the 50 most influential minority lawyers. And she's also the founder of Mindset Power LLC. And that is just scratching the surface of the many things that she has done. So thank you so much for your time. And thank you for being such an inspiration, such a tremendous influence in the field of law.
Thank you, Leanne. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, I'd love to kick it off and just start with the basics. So when
Okay.
you first looked at law, what was it that inspired you to pursue a career in law?
So I have to tell you, I did not know any lawyers growing up. And the only lawyer I knew of was Perry Mason. They came on in black and white, obviously, back then. But when I went to college, I actually started off as a major in social work.
Hmm.
And I had two roommates, to be perfectly honest, who came to Howard, which is where I went for undergrad, knowing that they wanted to be lawyers. So I started taking political science courses, and many of them were taught by professors who also taught at the law school. And once you became very familiar with Howard Law School and all of the prominent attorneys who graduated from law school. And so it was that experience, being taught by professors, being able to interact with these historical figures, at the law school or had gone to the law school, was just a great inspiration to me and for me.
Excellent. And then you started off in your law career. Can you share with us maybe a pivotal moment that you had that shaped the trajectory of your career?
I will tell you that one of the most important things that happened to me was when I attended my very first National Bar Association meeting in 1980 in Dallas, Texas. I had, first of all, never seen so many Black attorneys before, and so many who were doing so well in their careers, and so many who had that self confidence in exactly what it was that they were doing, what their goals were, what their purpose was, sort of in life and in their careers, and how important it was, to sort of have that sense of giving back. So they just really inspired me in ways I really can't describe. And also, it was such a welcoming environment, that I had not experienced, in law school or in my first employment. So it was just really a wonderful opportunity, and the closeness, it was like family immediately. And they just sort of changed, sort of had me understand that there were so many more things that I could do with my life.
Excellent. And you went on to become the first woman of color to serve as the president of the American Bar Association, which is a massive accomplishment. You also served as president of the National Bar Association. Can you tell us a little bit about that first milestone, though? What did that mean to you to be able to accomplish something like that?
So first, I was president of the National Bar Association, and that was in 93, 94. And it was interesting because, as I mentioned, the National Bar Association, it sort of grooms you, it nurtures you. And so that if there's something that you want to do, you're encouraged to do it. And you get support for doing it. And, this, I'm not suggesting that it's all smooth and rosy, et cetera, because I know that, my good friend, we decided who would run first for president of the National Bar Association. We decided he would run first, I would run after, and it truly was a mutual decision. But, no one ran against him, but when I ran, a man who was totally unqualified decided that he would run against me. So, oh yeah, oh yeah. So, but he didn't win, of course, and I was actually annoyed that he got 50 votes. But but actually, to be quite honest, I'm not sure that, but for the training that I got in the National Bar Association, I don't know that I would have been able to be president of the American Bar Association.
Mm. So that led from one straight into the other. And then, as you progressed, what are some of the really memorable or exciting initiatives that you championed during that time?
So when I was president of the National Bar Association, there were two things that happened that were absolutely wonderful. One, I really focused on federal judgeships for African Americans, and we were pretty successful in that. And I was not working alone, I have to say, but I worked together with people from the NAACP, the Legal Defense Fund, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, and with really some super duper leaders like Elaine Jones, Barbara Ironwine, Wade Henderson. They were just all wonderful. And we worked together to increase the number of Blacks on the federal bench. The other thing that I had an opportunity to do was to lead a delegation to monitor the first free and democratic elections in South Africa when Nelson Mandela was elected.
Mm.
And again, John Payton, who had been rest his soul, he had been the chair of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and his wife was she was responsible for all non-government. She was a responsible organization, so she was the head of all the NGOs, and so because of my relationship with him, I was able to sort of help the National Bar Association become an NGO for those elections.
That's just the wealth of experience you've had. It's got to be
Yes.
unbelievable to reflect back on your career and all the things that you've experienced.
I have been most fortunate and just blessed beyond measure.
And how would you address in today's day and age diversity in the legal community, advice to firms that you might want to help that are looking to work on diversity and inclusion?
So, when I was president of the American Bar Association, it was interesting because I was the first woman of color, many people told me that because I was the first woman of color, that I should not make diversity, equity, and inclusion the cornerstone of my presidency. And my position was, if I didn't do it, who would do it? Uh,
Exactly.
so yeah, and so I created a Diversity and Inclusion 360 Commission that looked inward and outward into the legal profession. And we had 4 working groups. And through those working groups, we established a number of different policies, had a number of policies adopted. We had about, before the ABA can have a policy, and before anybody can speak on a particular issue, there has to be a policy. And so we had about 9 policies adopted by the House of Delegates. So they become sort of the ABA law of the land. So I'm very proud of that, and really proud of the work that my 360 Commission did, because obviously I could not do it alone. And, it was chaired by a good friend, Eileen Letts, who knows how to get people in line. So, and so, but one of the things that continues to live is a model diversity survey that a lot of companies use to sort of track how their people of color, members of the LGBTQ community, people who have disabilities, how they're tracking in terms of hiring, promotions, etc. And so I'm really happy to say that a number of companies are still requiring law firms to use that model diversity survey. Very pleased about that.
That's truly exciting. And so if you had a firm that you were going to advise, is that a direction you would point them in and say this is a tool, or what would you say to them to improve in that area?
So I would say, if you're not using the model diversity survey, and usually it's client driven. So what we want to do is we want to encourage clients to, companies, in-house counsel to use the model diversity survey to give to their law firms. And so, but law firms can also sign on and say that they're supportive of the model diversity survey, which came out of ABA Resolution 113. But I would advise them, to really use metrics. The good thing about the model diversity survey, it doesn't just count numbers. It also shows progress that's being made year over year. And the other good thing is that because it's with the ABA, and the ABA is a not-for-profit, we don't make money off of doing the survey like some other organizations that do surveys. They charge you to do the survey. They actually make money from the survey, even though they're saying that the law firms should use it. But the law firm, you should use our survey, and by the way, pay us this amount of money to do our survey. Yeah.
Amazing. So now with this unbelievably distinguished career, as if you haven't conquered the world and made enough of a difference, you decided to start a consulting firm, which is wild. What inspired you to do that? Can you tell us a little bit more about your consulting firm?
So sure. So, people who know me, I joke about, if you slit my wrist, little D's and I's would come out instead of blood. And so and so it's, diversity, equity, inclusion is really in my DNA. And I am, before in my life as a lawyer, I did employment, but I worked on the defense side. But my position was always is, if the employer was wrong, what can we do better, to make people feel more inclusive so that they will not want to file a discrimination case. And I was also the chief diversity, equity, and inclusion officer at my last firm, in addition to being a partner. And one of the things I think that it's really important is to really have a roadmap so that you can create structures within your firm, so that it won't matter who the leader is at any given moment, that you have these structures in place so that you can ensure that people are always being included. You can ensure, you can look and reflect on, how am I treating this person the same way as I'm treating others? And also always ask yourself, when you look around the room, who is missing from this room? Not who's included, but who's missing.
That's a
And
brilliant question. Yes.
yes, who is missing? And so, I help firms and other, not just law firms, but other organizations, help them to create DEI roadmaps, so that once I am gone, they can have guidance as to what it is that they can do, built in with goals and timetables, and also who will be accountable for each aspect of the roadmap. I also do a lot of teaching on implicit bias. There can never be enough of that, and it has to be sort of ongoing education. I don't like to call it training. I like to call it education, because it's something that should be refreshed from time to time. Because people are so busy, some of these things don't stay in the forefront of their mind. So some things have to be repeated and reinforced, and that is what I like to do. I also believe in inclusive leadership. A lot of times people, in the context of law firms in particular, a lot of times department heads and office managers and so forth, they're not necessarily, they're smart and they know how to make money, but they don't always necessarily know how to be an inclusive leader. So I like to teach people on how they can be more inclusive leaders.
Excellent. And with your firm, is the mission to do that in corporations, in legal community? Are you mixing the two?
I'm mixing the two, and also in higher education as well. And, so I do work for healthcare organizations, for higher education, lots for law firms, obviously, because that's sort of a natural sort of transition, or nexus to what it is I do. But I also do education for new judges, and other members of the judiciary.
So since you're going across the board and you're in the judiciary and you're looking at law firms, What do you see in the current landscape are things that need to be worked on or improved in terms of diversity and inclusion in the legal community?
So I think that what first of all, especially with the Supreme Court decision, there have been a lot of threats made. People are trying to take the Supreme Court decision beyond higher education, which the Supreme Court was very limited in its decision as to who it applied to. But there are some who are saying that this applies to different programs, DEI, in law firms, and such is not the case. So I would encourage all entities who have developed significant and substantial DEI programming and started to have it embedded into your core values, et cetera, not to buy into the fear of what some people are attempting to have you do. Because what a lot of what's going on is that people are trying to make people feel fearful. And so they will sort of what they will call self-correct. And now is not the time to retreat, because if you look at the numbers, especially in the law firm context, for example, much has not changed, especially among people of color. For example, women, Black African American women still comprise less than 1% of equity partners in law firms.
That's
And so
amazing still in this day and age.
yes, and only 1 in every 7 lawyers is a person of color. So the legal profession is still very white, very male. And so I think that, if you look at those numbers and you also look at how well, because there are a number of metrics. McKinsey does wonderful work in pointing out, how well companies do when women are on boards, 2 or 3, not just one. And also when people of color are on boards, how much more profitable they are. So, I don't like to necessarily use the business case, but it is a legitimate reason to make sure that you have a diverse workforce, and that not that just that you have a diverse workforce, but you work to ensure that they stay with you, that you retain them. And you can only do that by ensuring that things are equitable. I think that, companies should pay attention to bias and how it can be interrupted, and to be really on the lookout for things that will disrupt their business. Because, the other thing is that, when you have high turnover, that's not helping you to be profitable either, because you've got to train new people. You're losing knowledge when somebody walks out of the door. So, there are a lot of things I think that companies should consider, should stay in the forefront of their minds, and understand that people say we want the best people to do the job, that diversity and the best, they're not mutually exclusive.
Mm, they certainly are not. And you did mention all the different things, the richness that comes with having that diversity.
Right.
Let me ask you a question though. When you look at what's going on right now, how do you see the role of technology having any kind of influence, or do you see one coming out of that?
So it's interesting. So you're talking about AI.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yes. So I think if AI is used responsibly, I think it's going to be beneficial in the legal profession. I think that it will be helpful. I just think that we have to be careful, we have to be mindful, we have to double check what's going on. And also we have to also consider the fact that people who are inputting information that generates the particular AI that we look, they may have their own biases as well. So we have to look at who is inputting the information in that's going to come back out.
Absolutely. So, with all of that, your wisdom, your experience, what key pieces of advice would you give to someone if they were maybe an up and coming lawyer?
So I would say that you should have confidence in yourself. And I actually had a women of color mentoring group because of a report I did and co-authored in 2006. It's called Visible Invisibility Women of Color in Law Firms. And at that time, about 85% of women of color were leaving their law firms within 5 years. And it was a serious retention issue, and a lot of them thought that it was because of some shortcoming of their own. And in most instances, I would say in 99% of the cases, that was not true. It was because people have low expectations, and and that because they have low expectations, they're not willing to take a chance on you to give you the good assignments, etc. But I say to them, understand what your own worth is and connect with other people who may be sharing similar experiences and boost other people up. And then make sure you look behind you to see who's behind you and give them that same type of encouragement. Because you did not get into law school because you were not smart. And you certainly were not able to stay in law school because you're not smart. And you certainly were not able to pass the bar because you were not smart. And believe it or not, that organization that hired you, they hired you because you're the cream of the crop. And so you don't suddenly get unsmart once you get in a position. So you have to understand that, you have a lot to bring, you have a lot of self-worth. And even though there are going to be challenges, if the challenges become too great in your particular organization, then that organization is not for you.
Outstanding. And any words on balance too, because being an attorney is so demanding and it is so incredibly easy to get out of balance. How did you juggle it for years in the legal profession and now with the consulting firm? How do you do it all? What would you tell somebody around balance?
So you can't do it all at the same time. And I personally, I make notes every night before I go to bed. I make my list of what I have to do the next day. And if I don't have my list, it doesn't exist. The other thing is, and I mentioned it to you, I have to have, when somebody says they want to meet with me, I will say, will you immediately send me a calendar invitation? Because if it's not in my calendar, it's not in my world. And so, and I also, I have to tell you that I've been cheating, but one of the things that I said that I was going to do every month, I was going to just take a personal day just for myself. I haven't done that well with that, but I did have an accountability partner because I think that we always have to hold ourselves accountable, not just for our work, but also for our well-being. And I think that, when you have an accountability partner, when you have someone checking on you. So I had one, her name is Cindy, and we were checking on each other to make sure we got at least 6 hours of sleep a night. And so we would check, 6 hours, I know is not a lot, but that was a lot for us. And in particular with her. But, I think that, we have to really hold ourselves accountable to getting that well-being, that mental health aspect that we need to really bring it down sometimes. And sometimes we can't do that on our own. We need somebody else to help us, force us to do that.
I love everything you said, and accountability, it's a game changer,
Yeah,
whether it's work, health, balance, spiritual life, all of it.
that's exactly right.
It's so true. And when it disappears, so do all the plans that came with it.
I know. That's why you have to be accountable to yourself. And also, if you don't feel like you can be, then you need to get some help, to have somebody to help you hold
Sure.
yourself accountable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now you're running the firm. Tell me some of the vision that you have for the future, or if you have any projects that you want to share that are coming up. What are you cooking up right now, and where do you see all of this going?
So I'm excited. I get an opportunity to interact with other DEI professionals all the time. I just finished working very closely with the Association of Law Firm Diversity Professionals. I had a contract with them for about 18 months, but I had been a member and one of the early members. When I joined in 2007, there were only about 30 of us. Now there are about 500. So, one of the things that I helped them to do also was hire a full-time executive director that they absolutely need right now. So, but, just, I am helping people with building their roadmaps. I am doing continuing education with organizations that I've been working with. I am speaking at a few Women's History Month programs. And yeah. So, and so I do some speaking, I like talking to people. I like to try to provide as much encouragement as I can to women and to people of color and to the cross section of that. And even, and being an ally to groups for which I am not a member, like the LGBTQA plus community.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And as we wrap up, again, I want to thank you for your time. How do people learn from you, follow you, communicate with you, learn about your company? Do you have, a website you can give out, or is there any social media or speaking engagements where people could follow you?
So I am on LinkedIn, and I have to confess that I discovered that I have two accounts that I need to merge on LinkedIn. But I can be reached at www.mindsetpowerguru.com. It's all one word, mindsetpowerguru.com. And I am on LinkedIn. I am on Twitter. I have to confess, I don't post much on Twitter, but I am on Twitter as well. I just did an interview on democracy tied into DEI. I interviewed Ken Frazier, who's the former CEO of Merck, and Ken Chenault, who's the former CEO of American Express. So that video is out there. I did it for Black History Month for the American Bar Association. I'm just so happy that the president, Mary Smith, who is Native American, provided me with that opportunity.
And where can people watch that?
So it is posted if no place else is on the American Bar Association website, but I think I'm going to post it on my LinkedIn site, and I'm going to soon post it on my own website, a link to it. Yeah. But it's
Fantastic.
definitely on the American Bar Association's website.
Excellent. And when we post
And
this,
I can send it to you too, if
I
you
was
like.
just about to say, when we post this, if you want to provide a link, or I'd love to be able to make that accessible to people,
Okay.
that would be great. We'll do that for sure.
Okay. Sounds good.
Well, thank you again. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate all the things that you have done to help so many people who have been in a position where they haven't felt included, or there hasn't been property diversity, and just the barriers you're breaking and what you stand for, and that you have just boundless, never-ending energy and ambition. I think you said the D and I would come out. I think the ambition comes flying out too if you did that. So with gratitude, I appreciate so much you being here today. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Leanne. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely my pleasure.
Okay.